Anna Kennedy. Now you'll notice I'm not giving you a sort of blurb on clarity. But I think a number of you may have seen Anna on TV. That was the first time I actually knew about you, because I saw you on a BBC News, BBC Breakfast it was, I think maybe 2 years ago.
BBC Breakfast, yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, wow, I was so blown away. He was so passionate, because my son is also on the autism spectrum, and so I think Anna was just, to me, you know, such an impassioned component of what children or adults with autism can actually do, rather than sort of focus on the negatives. Yeah, so it's amazing that you're in my book now, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
So Anna, would you share with the audience what happened when you and your husband discovered that both your boys were on the spectrum and they were turned away from an unbelievable 26 schools?
You earlier talked, hi everyone, you earlier talked about purpose, and these two boys are my purpose. Patrick on the right hand side here, he's got Asperger's syndrome, and Angelo has severe autism, a sensory processing condition, and nocturnal epilepsy, and everything I do is because of my boys, and then other families have benefited because of the fight that I've had. Both my boys were diagnosed, Angelo quite early on, he was 18 months, and Patrick at the age of 4, but we didn't find out until he was 7 years old. They forgot to tell us. And in 3 years we were struggling to get Patrick to school, screaming, kicking, he'd have nightmares, he was a very angry young man, he was being bullied, and one day, trying to get him into school as usual, with his legs wrapped around the buggy with Angelo in it and screaming, the head teacher said, "What are we doing to this young man, are we damaging him?" So we had a meeting, and that's when we found out in a meeting in front of everybody that Patrick had a diagnosis of Asperger's syndrome. So I was given 5 hours on tuition for both my boys. The lady that was working with Patrick, I ended up employing her at the school that we set up, and the lady that was working with Angelo had never worked with a child with autism before, and on the third day I always remember her sitting on the carpet and she was crying because she said she didn't know what to do. So every book that I read about is early intervention, how crucial it is, and I can tell you 5,000 million percent it is so crucial to start working with children with autism as early as possible. So when I spoke to the local authority, they said the ball was in my court, it was down to me to basically find the right type of school. So I went to visit lots of different schools, schools for children with autism that had such a long waiting list, units attached to schools, mainstream schools, SLD schools, MLD schools. And the thing is, once your sons are diagnosed with autism, no one actually sits down with you and says, this is what autism is. They give you a leaflet and they send you on your way. When I read about autism, there's about 18 or 19 different strategies of working with children with autism. And I thought, well, which one do I choose? How do I know which one is going to be right for my sons? Both my boys, because they're so different from each other. Angelo's hardly got any speech whatsoever. He doesn't sleep. I've had 3 hours sleep. I may look like the happy, smiley person walking around, but I just don't get a lot of sleep with Angelo at all. And he's still, at his age, you know, he still has got a lot of difficulties. He has no sense of danger, so I have to be on my alert all the time. So what we did was we found out about schools, cut long story short, and they were going to knock it down and build 37 flats. So my husband and I decided that we were going to set up a school. How hard could it be? So we had a crash course in absolutely everything, and we've created a most amazing school. And I'm actually one of the mums here, the assistant head is here, which is like really weird. Adam, he's such a lovely guy, and you can see he's really passionate about working with the children. But there's 190 children now that travel in from 19 different local authorities, and the children are aged between 3.5 and 19. And then when my boys started to get a little bit older, I was looking to think, well, what is there for adults with autism? In particular, Angelo, because he's always going to need one-to-one support. He's always going to have to be working on his independent living skills. There was just nothing at all. They were like in Devon, Cornwall. I thought, I don't want to send my son to Devon or Cornwall. So we thought, okay, we need to set up a college. So we set up a vocational college for 45 adults now, again travelling from 13 different local authorities, age 16, and the eldest gentleman we've got there is 55 years old. And then in 2009, I decided to set up a charity because families were contacting me, still going through the same difficulties. I know I go on, just have to show. Going through the same difficulties I went for diagnosis, trying to find the right type of school, transition, once they get to 19, what's available out there. So I decided that we needed to set up something so that families didn't feel as isolated as I did, because you probably picked up my accents from the North East and from Middlesbrough. And I moved down to London because my husband was studying, so I didn't really know anybody, so I just felt really isolated. Then when I asked if there was a support group in Hillingdon, they said there used to be one, but it's closed and there isn't one now. So that's why we set up a support group in my lounge at home. And all these parents started coming out of the woodwork, because I was told my sons were the only 2 boys in Hillingdon that had autism, and then 275 families came out of the woodwork who had children and adults on the autism spectrum.
It is quite an extraordinary story. Actually, my husband, I wanted to just revisit the stories, and so I got my husband to read the story in the car when we were coming down here, and he was welling up when he was reading those stories. So, yeah, it's an amazing achievement what you've done, and I think those of us who have had children with autism later on are really indebted to you, because it's people like you who made it possible to have these special schools.
And do you know what? Children come to our school, and I always remember a young man a couple of years ago, he was told you'd never amount to anything. And we have a special assembly when the children leave, and I know I'm like crying tissues, because I know where these children have come from and where they are at. And there's quite a few of the kids that are going to be leaving this year, and they're part of a street dance crew that we set up called Autism with Attitude. And they're amazing, and a lot of these kids are going to be leaving, but this young man, I remember, he was given his speech, and he's told that he'd never amount to anything, and he left with A-star English GCSE, and he left with maths. But I felt like saying, go get the certificate and stick it up the teacher's nose. Just say, look what I've achieved. And he said, this school may be tired, it may be old, because it is an old school. He said, but it's amazing, and it's what I call home, and I want to come back and I want to teach children here with autism. And I was, whoa!
Thank you so much, and I'm sure we've got loads more questions for you. So when at the end of when all 7 ladies have been, we're all going to be here and taking questions from you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.